Okay, now I'm not muted. I'm not muted anymore. Yes, I did. Hey Joe, George, no audio it seems. So yeah, hopefully we got that fixed. My wife is tuned in next door and she just came in to tell me. Thanks for coming to see. Might just be the two of us. I saw something that said there's 5 people viewing, but that might be like me and you and Leah. So we can just have a chat. I didn't really have anything particular planned for this, just thought it would be interesting to see if anybody tuned in and had any questions, and I can talk about anything. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer your questions. It might be a little bit strange. There's probably a 10 or 20-second delay between you typing something and hearing my response. But if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to try and answer them. And Leah says hi everyone, which is me and George. So, hey Leah. Okay, you have a convoluted question and you've been trying to find a solution. Yeah, fire away. I feel like I have to fill the silence until the next part of the question comes up. It seems no matter what time or day I decide to do some kind of live stream, there's somebody blowing leaves outside. Last time it was Saturday or Friday, and now it's Wednesday. Hope it's not too distracting. Radio silence. Maybe I should have some music playing in the background. 7 people. Start talking about what I've been up to. I'm going to say, there's me in this room, there's my wife next door, oh my god, and there's someone who is speaking in Spanish. So Leah, maybe you can translate those Spanish things for me and ask Carlos if he understands my English. Okay, while I wait for questions to roll in, I'll tell you a little bit about what I've been up to. If any of you are used to watching my YouTube videos, which I used to make many of and haven't for a long time, that's partially because I was touring a lot with Wishbone Ash, and partially because I met my now wife and I got married in March, and I've been spending most of my time out in California with no drums. I do have a practice pad, which is over there, that I've done very little with, but no drums and no setup for recording new videos. So the YouTube things on my channel have been sparse, but I've been spending the majority of my time working on PolyNome. So I'm sure probably most of you are familiar with PolyNome. If you're not, it's an Apple app for iPod, iPad, iPhone, which is a kind of metronome, sequencer, practice log, setlist creator. It does a lot of stuff, and I'm continually working to make it do more stuff. So that's basically what my focus has been on, and since the quarantine started, I've been able to spend real work days doing that, because prior to this, it was either working on it after a sound check or on the bus, or in between tours I had to, I don't say had to, I was back with Leah and we were traveling around, and I didn't want to be spending all my time working, but it's felt like with everything that's going on, it's been good for me to have a project to work on, and I've been really excited to get a whole bunch of new features in there and refine the interface and things like that. So I'm excited for what's coming next, which I might demo for you a little bit later on. But as far as drum videos go, I haven't made any new ones for YouTube, but I have an awful lot of content on... Yes, George, you can email me the question. I have an awful lot of content off YouTube, which was hosted on my website, joecrabtree.com. And then I've tried moving some of the content to a platform called Teachable. And I actually put an offer for that in the comment of this video, and I'll also paste it into the chat here if anybody wants to check it out. I made a link for So you can basically get a month access to 70 odd drum lessons for like $1, and they're all immediately available. And if you like them, then hopefully you'll stick around and watch the rest. And if not, then it's $1. So if you've got some time to do some practice, those lessons are kind of everything that I would teach to students that came for private lessons, and it was all sorts of different ideas of things to work on, and it's not structured in, for a beginner drummer, this is where you start, this is how you hold the sticks, this is how you do this. It jumps around just to different areas that I was interested in and I thought viewers may be interested in. So that's where my attention went. After the YouTube videos, I kind of spent a lot of time making those videos. So I recommend checking that out if you are looking for some drum instruction. Neil says, any plans for an Android version? I'm sure you've been asked before, but it looks like such a cool app that I can't use. Unfortunately, I don't have plans for an Android version, although it would be nice to have an Android version. It's taken me 10 years to get this far, and if you were to ask my darling wife, she'll tell you how much time I spend working on it every day just to add small new features. And strangely enough, it's got to the stage where I don't even know how the app works. If I had to build this from scratch, I don't know where I would start. It's like a monstrous code base, and to move to Android, which is a platform that I know nothing about, and to be able to accommodate all those devices would probably take me another 3 or 4 years of solid work, and I just don't have the time or resources to do that at the moment. So sorry about that. Although I will say that you can buy PolyNome. You can get a second-hand iOS device, like an iPhone 6 or an iPod. I don't know the exact things, but if you can pick up a second-hand iPhone or iPod that runs iOS 11 or 12, you can install PolyNome on that, and it will cost you less than it would cost to buy a Dr. Beat metronome in the good old days where we had to buy hardware. And then, of course, you have access to any other apps that are only on Apple. So you could essentially pretend like you're buying a physical metronome, and it's cheaper than buying a physical metronome still. So that is my current answer for people on Android, I'm afraid. Although I would love to support it, it's just not feasible at the moment. So George says he emailed me a question. So let me open up my email and take a look. I guess it's a long question. And I thought I had this set up so that the chat would appear on the screen, but it doesn't appear to be doing that. I do not know why that is. I'm relatively new to using Streamlabs too. Just refreshed a couple of things, so let's see if that helps. Okay, let's have a look. George's question. Do you have any systems? You know what? Let's set this up so that you can see it on the screen as well, because it is a long question. I think this should do it. Oh, I don't know if you can read that or not. It says, do you have any systems for taking practice ideas into a fully working system into PolyNome? I've watched the recent video you made about practice pain points, which was great, but I still don't have a fully working system that enables me to take practice ideas and immediately know in which playlist to put them so that I practice them efficiently. I'm going to have to reread this in a second. For example, let's say you have several ideas of new things to work on. You have an idea of the frequency at which you should practice them, daily, twice a week, 3 times a week. How do you go about putting that into a system in the app so that all you need to do is sit down to practice each day? I guess you could have a playlist for each day, and then depending on how often you want to practice a preset, the more playlists you put in them. Then once you gain a certain amount of control over a certain preset, you either take it out of the playlist or you make it appear less frequently. I've been playing around with using another app, Notion, to keep track of what is in which playlist, which could be helpful to have a bird's eye view of all the presets in each day's playlist. This could help, for example, when periodically going over all the playlists to make sure that everything is up to date and everything that needs to be practiced is in one of the day's playlists. Okay, so I think you're going to love what I've been working on. I'm going to give you a sneak preview, and then you can tell me if you think this would answer your question. So let me switch to this view where you can see the phone. So I would suggest that using labels is a good way to organize things. If you've got a lot of presets and playlists, you can use labels to say, you know, this is something that I maybe want to work on in the future. So I might get an idea for an exercise and create a preset, but I don't want to work on it now. I want to work on it in the future. So I might select those presets that I just created and add a label for future. And sometimes I'll put an exclamation mark so that the label turns up at the top of my list. And I have labels for Instagram in here. If I've got an idea for something that I want to post on Instagram, I'll tag it with Instagram. When I come to create a post, then I've got my Instagram things here. So I would use labels in that way to help you structure what you have and filter things like that. But so you were asking about working on things on certain days. So this is the feature that I'm currently working on for the next version, and it's the goals page. So I mentioned in the live stream last time that you can go to the practice log for a preset or a playlist, and you can see when you last worked on it and a bunch of information about that preset, and that in here you can set a goal. So now I've added this days you want to practice. So this is one of the new things. But let's say you want to practice every day for an hour, and now this preset has a goal set for it, and you'll see when we go back to the presets library it has an orange icon. So all of these have goals attached to them. And in that live stream, what I was saying is that you could add presets to a playlist, or you could add playlists to a quick access playlist, and I've improved that as well. So in playlists, so this is the Stone Killer workout, which is a 20-minute workout for hand speed. So one new feature is you can create quick access playlists much more easily. You can just tap on this and say new, and you could call it Monday. So now you get a quick access playlist called Monday, and then you tap to add links to other playlists, and you would choose the things that you wanted to work on a Monday, and then insert links. And now you've got your Monday playlist. So that was the way I was suggesting. And then you would load the app. You would go to your quick access and choose load. You would click on Monday, and now you can work on these things. You can work on the gap click, or you can work on what other things we added in here, paradiddle practice, etc. So that's what I was suggesting, but what I'm working on is a completely new way of dealing with this. So I've added a goals page, which you can access from this menu or the main menu. And the goals page shows you what goals you have set for today. So I am going to delete all of these and show you how this would work from scratch. This is my test setup. So we have today's goals, we have target goals, and other days' goals. So a target goal, I can edit this, for example, is a goal where you don't have any hours set. So you say, per day, I don't want to practice any hours, but I do want to play this for 45 hours in total before I move on to the next. So when you have only a target time, the item will show up in target goals, and this is just something you can work on whenever you want to work on it. Let's say there's something you want to work on every day. We'll add a new goal, and you can search your presets or playlists. So let's search for the paradiddle practice, for example. And let's say I want to work on this every day for 4 minutes. Okay, hit done, and now we have this goal, and you can see today we've played 0 minutes of 4 minutes total. And then let's add another thing to today's goal, another playlist. Let's see what happens if I search for singles practice. So we'll add that, and I'll say I want to work on that for 2 minutes. So a total of 6 minutes of things I want to work on today. And so the idea is that you would open the app, and I'm going to set up a notification system so you can get a notification that pops up that says it's time to practice. You have 2 goals today, and when you clicked on that notification, it would take you to the goals page, and you would see what today's goals are, and then you would just tap to load paradiddle practice and hit play and practice your paradiddles. So I'll just log a few seconds of this, and then when we go back into the goals page, you can see I've done 8 seconds of the 4 minutes that I wanted to do. I can edit this goal, say I only want to do 1 minute, and so we'll have completed more of it. So 8 seconds of 1 minute. And basically when this is done, and I can manually go into the practice log for this preset, and I can add some practice time. So let's say I'm going to add a minute of practice for today. So there's my minute, and then when we go and look on the goals page, you'll see, okay, paradiddle practice is done. Now I work on my singles practice. So just tap to load it, and you work on your singles practice. And when that's done, your goals page will say you've completed everything for today. So what you can do is specify the days you want to work on certain goals. So if singles practice is something that you didn't want to work on a Wednesday, but you wanted to work on a Thursday, you can edit and just say, I only want to play this on Thursdays. And you'll see that then it's turned up in the other days section, so that will appear on today's goals when it's Thursday. And because I only had this one to do today, then I'm done. So that's what I'm working on for the next release, and I hope that kind of solves your problem. Let me know if there's anything missing from that. But I'm excited about this because I have the same thing that, I mean, I don't actually use PolyNome for drum practice so much anymore, but I do use it for tracking meditation, and at times I've used it for tracking exercise and things, or just timing other things. So this is my plan, that I open my phone, I tap on the goals page, and then just load up the things that I've decided I wanted to work on today. So that is how this currently looks. I have some tweaking to do, because at the moment it doesn't properly calculate the time you have to work on today if you've only selected so many days in a week, but I'm making pretty good progress with this. So I'll release it to beta testers to try out, and then hopefully get it in a new version in the next few weeks. So if you have thoughts or feedback on features that you might want to see in there, do let me know. In terms of when it's ready, it is hard to say, because technically I'm fairly close and I could push an update like next week, for example, but then it wouldn't be fully tested, and I don't want to push an update and then decide that there was a better way of doing something and it's too late to kind of go that route. So I really want to play around with this and get some proper testing done before I release it. George, I don't remember if I send you beta versions or not, but if I don't, then email me again and I'll make sure that I do, but this will be in the next beta version anyway. So you can test that out, because it would be really good to have some people using it in practice, because as I say, I'm not doing a lot of practice at the moment. Yes, I do. I thought so. So yeah, it's coming soon. I just have a few tweaks before I put it out as the beta version. So I can't see how many people are in this chat. Maybe it's just back to me and George and Leah. Is anybody else watching? Or George, do you have any other questions? I'll just sit like this. See if there's anything else I've been working on with this. I think most of what I've been doing has been with that goals page. And the quick access. Yeah, I changed that because it was a bit of a nightmare to use. And also, if you have a playlist, so this, if you look in this quick access, so I can expand the Monday quick access playlist that I'm looking at. So within this, I've said I've got the gap click builder, the paradiddle practice, single doubles, and Wilcoxon's. So if I load up this one, I have no goal set for that. If I load up this one, I have no goal set for that. This one, so I don't have goals set for any of those three apparently. But I can tap on the practice log button here and I can view the practice log data for Wilcoxon's. And if I load up this Monday playlist here, I can actually now in the new version tap on the practice log and see the practice data for all of these. So I can see I've worked on these for 2 hours this week. And if I look on the charts for this, you'll see it's split between the different presets and the different playlists. So that's a new feature that's coming in the next version too. So that's basically what is coming up in the next version of PolyNome. So yes, if anyone else is watching and has any questions, feel free to post them. Let me think what I've been doing. Oh, any chance of a random muting slider? You'll have to expand on what you mean by that. I assume you know that there is a random muting in here. Wait a minute, unmute. Random muting. So there is a slider. You can say mute notes. There's a slider. 51% of the time if I link the metronome. Oh, it's a little bit funky. There you go, I've just found a bug. If I mute this and we just have this going, then you have a random muting slider. So 44% of the time, 25% of the time. So let me know if you meant something different, because this has been in here for a long time. And you can mute notes or bars or note groups or cycles, so it's fairly flexible. I'll turn this off for now. So yeah, let me know, George, if that's what you meant. And someone else says, hi Joe, just joined the stream now. Used to love your deep dive technique videos from several years ago. Any chance of more of those coming along? Okay, so I mentioned this a little bit earlier. I'm going to post a link to where I've moved some of my content to. So I have joecrabtree.com, which has tons of lessons on that are, when you sign up, they're released one a week. But my website, that website is quite out of date. And so over Christmas, I was moving content to a Teachable site, and that link will take you to that site. And for $1, you can get a month of a trial. And I think there's something like 70 lessons on there, which are between 20 minutes and an hour each. So there's a lot of content, and it's all immediately available for as long as you remain subscribed. And that's over the last sort of 7 or 8 years, that's where I put most of my focus regarding creating video lessons. So that's where to go if you want to find more stuff that is not on YouTube. And there's a lot there that covers everything from technique to different playing styles to overcoming hurdles with your playing, and just ideas to kind of get you inspired. So, and there's also, you may or may not be aware of the key counting course that I put together, which I was also excited about. here's a discounted offer for that. I think that will get you 40% off the key counting course, which is a method of counting odd time signatures, which you can also use with 4/4 to come up with new grooves and to help you really get inside the music. And I was really excited about that when I put it together, and I still am. I just don't have a drum kit to play anymore. But I think it's a concept that you won't come across anywhere else, and that's worth checking out if you're looking for some inspiration while in lockdown. Very cool that we've got somebody from India in the chat. Oh, now it says message retracted. But somebody said they were watching from India, and it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, so that's cool. Thanks for tuning in. And then let's look at George. Joe meant something similar to the tempo percentage slider, so you could change the random muting percent for all the presets in a playlist by changing the slider. Okay, that seems like it might get confusing in terms of knowing what's going on. Is that something that is available in the paste attributes? Muting, random mute options. So technically, you could, if you wanted to apply random muting to all the items in a playlist. So let's load up a playlist, and I'll set all of these to play for 2 reps, say. So here you have just paradiddles playing at different times, but if you wanted to apply random muting to everything, there is no overall slider, because I think it's quite a niche feature to apply it to everything in a playlist. But what you can do is go to random muting and set it to what you want. I'm assuming this is going to work. I haven't tested this. So let's say muting 90% of the time, so that we'll definitely hear some muting, and I'll just save the changes. Okay, so that's working. So then if I copy this by tapping on the preset name and copy preset, then on the playlist, if I go into edit mode and select all, I can tap actions and paste attributes. I'm going to say don't tell me again, that's just a bit of help. So then I can go down here and choose random muting options. Let's see if this works. In theory, that will have pasted the random muting to all of these. So let's select one of these and see if it mutes. Yep. So that's how you would achieve that. Looks like a lot of steps, but it's pretty quick once you know what you're doing. So again, set the random muting as you wish. So let's mute less 20% of the time. I'll save the changes and then copy that. I'm going to say don't show again, but there's more information about copy paste there. So you copy it, and then in here you select all and paste attributes for both sequences and paste the muting. So that's how that works. Oops. There we go. And that works for pasting other things as well. So if you don't know about the copy paste, let's say you wanted to put something in sequence of 2 under all of these, you can edit this pattern. I'm going to put in a clave, which I saved the other day. So now we have paradiddle over a clave with the random muting. Let's turn that off. Random muting off. And then save the changes. So I have this pattern down here. If I wanted to put that in all of the items in the playlist, again, I can just go and copy the preset, and in the playlist, select all, paste attributes, and I'm going to say paste from sequence of 2 in the source, which is what I just copied, to sequence of 2 of all of the items in the playlist, and I'm going to paste everything. And then you'll see when I load these up that they all have the clave in sequence of 2. So that paste attributes is a kind of power user feature when you want to manipulate things without going and doing them one at a time. So somebody, right to Mukund, I don't know how to say that, but says thank you for the great content over the years. Thank you for watching the content over the years. I can't believe how long I've been doing this for. What are we on, 2020? And I think I put the first video up in 2004 or 5 or 6, something like that. It's a long time. And it's been fun to do, and it's been great kind of having this community of people. I've met a bunch of people in person over the years that have found me through the website, and I think it's really great that drummers from all over the world can connect through the wonders of the internet and YouTube. And I've reached out to drummers that I've seen on YouTube and met up with them and made new friends, and it's great. So it's nice that there's this community around. George says, I use it a lot, so I was thinking as I improve with certain playlists, I could then adjust the slider so that each preset's random muting percent increases in relation to that specific preset. Yeah, I would have to probably see how you worked with that. The random muting is one of the first things I ever put into the app, and I never really used that much. So I don't know if you're just using it with a quarter note click and you're having the click drop out more and more, but unless you need to do it, yeah, you'd have to let me know whether it would be worth it, because whenever I'm adding new features to the app, I have to think about where that feature is going to go, and if it's kind of if it deserves its own control in the interface, because already this is a fairly overwhelming app. So for example, if I click on the plus button, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different options in there, which I realize is a lot of options. But these are all things that you want to do quite a lot of the time, and I think they make sense, at least, and I don't know what the alternative is to having them all here, because if they're in some kind of submenu, then it's just more clicks to do the things that you need to do. The same thing applies when you're performing actions on something. I tap on actions and there's all of these options, and this is only showing the ones that are relevant. So in certain circumstances there are more buttons here to allow you to do more things. So I always struggle with trying to, it's not really keeping it simple. It's simple in that they explain kind of exactly what they are, so hopefully it makes some kind of sense. But knowing where to put those things, for example, this practice log button, I moved out of this menu because I don't think many people even knew that this was a clickable menu. And the practice log used to be in here. So I added the change playlist sounds because that's something that's really useful to be able to do, is change the sounds for the entire playlist at once. But the way that the random muting works is it's stored on the preset. So making a change on the playlist level would be changing it on all of the underlying presets. And within the preset, it's kind of hidden. You don't know that it's on until it actually mutes. So I don't have a way of showing you that this is set to randomly mute. So sometimes it's confusing if you're playing and you see the mute label flashing up a lot. That's a feature that I haven't given much love to in a long time. So I'm not sure about the best ways to improve that. But maybe, George, if you send me like a video of how you work with it and exactly what you're hoping for, then maybe there's a way that I can fit it in. One of the things I'd really like to do in an upcoming version is have a way of applying mixer settings to the entire playlist, because the volume levels are preset based. So each preset in this playlist has its own mixer levels, and you can paste them, you can copy and paste like we did with the random muting, but there's currently no way of setting them for the overall playlist. And my idea was to have, when a playlist is loaded, some kind of extra row of buttons, perhaps under the faders, that you would turn on, and maybe the fader would go red, and then that fader would be controlling the volume for everything in the playlist rather than the individual presets. But there are problems with that make it difficult. For example, the faders show up for the letters that have been assigned. So in sequencer 1, we have faders for the line 1 and line 2 volumes, and L and R because they are the sounds that are assigned. But if I go and edit the pattern and add some more sounds like that, you'll see that we get more faders. All of these faders now you can control the volumes of. So if I had this preset with 8 sounds in a playlist, and then this one with only 2 sounds, then when the playlist is loaded, I need to show all of the faders whether or not they exist for the preset that's showing, because I might need to change them for other items in the list, and it gets really complicated. And there's the skeleton code for like a starting point that I worked on maybe 18 months ago, and then just got too confusing and I wasn't quite sure how I wanted it to work. So that's kind of on the back burner. And I was thinking the other day about potential workarounds. Maybe I can just have something where you would tap on this and choose like set levels, and it would bring up a mixer, and you could just set the levels you wanted, and it would apply those levels to all of the presets. But that's less satisfying. Easier to code, but less satisfying. So it's an ongoing project trying to get all of this stuff to be efficient and work in the best way, and I'm always making changes that kind of make all my previous instructional videos redundant, because every single video that I put out on PolyNome says tap the disk button, which used to be a floppy disk icon up here, that I always had a bit of an issue with, because people born after like 1990 probably don't know what a floppy disk is. So the plus seems to make more sense. It was hard to know what to put here, but the plus seemed to make more sense. That's where you're saving or creating presets. But all of my previous videos say tap the disk button, so somebody kind of is in the same place, but you know, it's what happens when you're making changes all the time. Paste attributes works very well for me with doing this. Good, thank you. That makes me feel better. I don't have to put that on my to-do list for a while. So, is anybody else watching? Please say hello if you are, just so I know you're there. So we had Carlos, who said, my wife translated for me. It says, "Congratulations, you are an excellent drum instructor. I learned a lot from you. Thanks for your content." That's very kind of you to say so, Carlos. I'm really glad that I was helpful to you in your journey. And then we got Neil and George and Wright, or Rita, or I'm not sure, and Smurf S. And that seems to be everybody who's here, so that's nice. So if you got any more questions, ask away. I guess I will plan to end this at 3:30 because people have lives. Leah says, "Hello, watching from the other room in Orange County." She's on the other side of the wall behind there. So ask away with questions about anything. I can talk about drumming, I can talk about coding, I can talk about PolyNome, talk about touring, talk about the weather in California, which is hot, mainly. Or what else? That's kind of my life. Pretty much what I do all day, every day, is sit at my computer and add features to this app. It's literally like having a child kind of on my mind all the time, thinking about how it's going to grow. How did you get your break with Wishbone, says Neil. And Leah says, I could talk about my lack of touring. Yes. So with Wishbone, so the story is, back in 2004, I moved to London from the north of England, and I decided I was going to um, try and make it as a drummer and get some professional gigs. So I moved to London, auditioned for various bands, and ended up playing with a few bands in a few things. And I think I quit my job that I had in 2006 because I got a gig with the band that were paying me to rehearse. It was backed by a guy, like some millionaire, who had a girl that he'd found in the West End and put a band around her, which included Jack Bruce's son playing guitar, and a really great pianist. And I made some good friends through that band. And that was the first time that I could quit my job and actually make a living from playing drums. So I did that for a while. I auditioned for the Blue Man Group and got through to the final stage of that and thought I was going to get that gig, and was thinking to myself, what is my future going to be? Is it going to be I forget what she was called, Zara something band, or Blue Man? And neither of those things happened. But then I got a random text message from a drummer called Mike Sturgis, who was the head of the drum department at the Academy of Contemporary Music in Guildford, where I had taught a little bit. I would cover for teachers that couldn't make it. And he was in Wishbone Ash, like in the 90s. He recorded an album with him and did some tours. And when their previous drummer, to me, Ray Weston, was leaving the band and they needed someone else, Andy got in touch with Mike and said, would you want to do this again? And Mike was busy being head of the drum department, and he put my name forward. And I think I got a text message from Mike saying, do you want to join Wishbone Ash? And I didn't know who they were, but my mum did. I was at my parents' at that point, and she said that my Uncle Peter was a big fan of Wishbone Ash. And so that's basically how I got that break. And I had some videos online that Mike had shared with Andy, and Mike had basically kind of said, this guy's similar player to me, and he kind of vouched for me. And so I spoke with Andy on the phone about the gig and said that I would do it. And I met up with Bob, the bass player, in London. We went out for dessert at a pub, and he just came to check that I wasn't a complete arsehole. And he also came along to a rehearsal that I was doing with David Cross Band, just to see that I could play a little bit. And then I got on a plane, flew to Helsinki, and the first time I met Andy and Muddy, the guitarist at the time, was when they picked me and Bob up from the airport. And then we spent 10 days recording an album in Helsinki, and in the middle of that, we took a 12-hour train ride to Moscow to play my first ever gig with them, which Andy dropped on me like a week before I was flying out, because I didn't think I was going to have to play any live shows until a month or so after the recording. And then he just called me up and said, could you do a gig in Moscow in the middle of the recording session? So I worked, he sent me a live recording of the set, and I kind of charted things out. And we had one run through of each song because we had to get an album recorded, so there wasn't time for rehearsing. So one run through of each song, and I had my notes about all these, different songs with crazy changes and things in the middle. And then we did this gig in Moscow, and it kind of went okay. 12 hours back on the train. I don't know why we didn't fly. But that was a good opportunity to meet the band and spend a few hours each chatting to them. So that's how I ended up in Wishbone Ash. And at the time, I thought I was joining to record an album and do a tour. That was all that was talked about. And then cut to 13 years later, and we've done a lot of gigs, traveled to a lot of places. It's funny that my wife, who's next door, as I've mentioned a few times, I met her on online dating when I had decided that I was going to move to LA because I liked the weather. And I was just searching for people in and around the sort of LA area. And Leah her profile said she was in Laguna Beach. And the only reason that I'd heard of Laguna Beach is that the previous drummer in Wishbone Ash got married to an American who lived in Laguna Beach and relocated to Laguna Beach. So 2 Wishbone Ash drummers marrying American women and moving here. So I don't know. who's coming after me, but maybe we can start a drum circle or triangle. But it's good. Wishbone Ash has been really good to me. I've enjoyed it, and it's strange. We would do gigs and people would say, "Oh, keep doing this. Don't give up," because people love coming to the shows. And I had no plans to really stop doing it, but the world has stopped all live music for a while, as I'm sure you're aware. Neil, has the auditioning process changed these days? Is the key to getting these gigs essentially networking, would you say? I can't really answer that with any kind of authority because I've auditioned for very few things. I think in the early days in London, I answered ads in newspapers and went for a few auditions, but they weren't big bands. They were, local bands where the advert was for a drummer with a van so he could drive different people to gigs. I did one audition for a band that was kind of record label based, which I don't think, well, I didn't get it. And I did the Blue Man audition, which I turned up to kind of late. I wasn't supposed to be there, but someone else told me about it, and I just thought I'd go down and see if they would see me. But I really don't know how auditions work. I think probably a lot of the time networking is the key, because if you think about it, if you were a band, like I know people who are in big bands. I know the guy who plays with Tom Morello and the girl who plays bass with Cher, and the Tom Morello guy plays with I can't remember what she's called. Leah, who else does Chris play with? I forget. Opposite of Tom Morello, anyway. But those gigs, it's a funny thing with Chris, because I was walking around with him like 2 years ago, coming up to New Year's, and we were talking about the future and what he wanted to do, what I wanted to do, and he told me that he wanted to be in a big band, like a kind of A-list band, and play some big gigs, and he wanted to be on a late night TV show. Yeah, it's Avril Lavigne that he plays with. And we had this long discussion as we were walking along the beach about how does that work, and he said, I have no idea. I said, how are you going to make this happen? And he said, I don't know. And then literally 2 months later, he posted something on Facebook about how he was going to be on the actual late show with Avril Lavigne. And it just seems like one of those crazy universe giving you what you ask for things. But he just knew people, and those opportunities come up if you're a nice guy and you can play and people know that you exist. And I think, the band before Wishbone that I played with was called Pendragon, and it was an 80s progressive band. And a friend of mine told me, he said, "Oh, I hear this band's looking for a drummer," and he gave me the number of the keyboard player and said, "You should call him up." And I remember thinking to myself, "Yeah, I should call him up. I'll do it tomorrow or in a few days," because I was kind of nervous to just call up a random number and ask them if they wanted a drummer. And then I thought to myself, what's the phrase, why put off till tomorrow what you can do today? And literally that sort of cliched phrase made me pick up the phone and call this guy. And I called him and said, I heard that you're looking for a drummer. I just thought I'd call and see what the deal was. And he said to me, how do you know we're looking for a drummer? Our drummer doesn't know that we're looking for a drummer. And he said, and we've got someone in mind anyway, but give me your details just in case. So I gave him my website and thought, I guess that wasn't going to work out. And then a couple of days later, he called me up and said, can you do a European tour with us starting in 4 weeks from now? So that's how I got that gig. And it just goes to show that it is who you know, and you really should just try for things, even if you think they're not going to pay off. Because if I knew that they had a drummer already, I didn't know that they were thinking of firing the existing drummer. I don't know how my friend found out. I think it was through a rehearsal studio. So he rehearsed at the studio and kind of overheard that they might be looking for a drummer. Do you know anyone? Kind of on the down low, and mentioned it to me, and I just called them up, and that's how I ended up getting that gig. It always seems scary, and if I was in the position of looking for work now, maybe not in the pandemic times, but I don't know exactly what I would do. I would probably just email people and call people and ask around, who's looking for a gig. And maybe there's nobody exactly like at this moment in time, but if you keep calling and asking around, people know you're available. And if you're a nice enough guy and you turn up on time and you can do the job, then there's a chance that you'll get it. It's definitely a right time, right place kind of thing. And you can't control those factors, but you can control how much in the forefront of somebody's mind you are when they're thinking about it. Because if you call up somebody, a keyboard player, and say, do you know anybody who's looking for a drummer? And they say no. And then a few days later or a few weeks later, somebody asks if they know any drummers, then you're going to be the last person that called them and asked is going to be at the forefront of their mind. So I guess that's how it works. But I don't really know. And I always think it's crazy when I hear of people like Chris who's doing, two big gigs. Avril is the kind of A-list TV pop thing, and Tom Morello is great and his hero. And he said it's really different playing in those two bands. But I always wondered how it would work. Wishbone has always been so busy, touring sort of 6 months of the year and doing festivals and things in between, that there was never really enough downtime for me to get anything else happening. There'd usually be 3 months in the summer that was pretty quiet, and that's when I would work on website things or get into app development. One year, learn to skydive, or paragliding. I did 1 year in scuba diving. I'd always have to try and find something to do in the 3 months in the summer that would make this year feel different to last year, because I didn't want it to feel like a loop where I was just living the same year, Groundhog Year. So I was looking for something different. But I never really understood how people were in so many different bands doing so many different things. I don't know how that works. And I never really did the session thing either. I was never in the right place or knew the right people to do that kind of thing. That was always like what I said I wanted to do when I moved to London. I want to be a session drummer. And I've done like 2 sessions maybe in my life. So happy to answer more questions. If anybody's still watching, feel free to ask away. And if not, I'm not just going to sit here all day. But it's kind of fun talking to my computer. And let's see. Oh, George did ask a question. Any other ideas of how to use the randomize feature? I would say that depends on what ways you've used it already. Oh, and also, any thought with the difference using PolyNome on the iPad versus iPhone? I've never used it on an iPad. On it's really designed for the iPhone. That's what I use it on all the time. So the interface works better on the iPhone. On an iPad, it basically you just see the main screen and the library together. So if you imagine this on the right-hand side and this on the left-hand side, you don't have to swipe between them. That's pretty much the only difference. It's exactly the same code base, and it's just a case of trying to make things fit in nice ways. I have a few ideas about the randomize feature that I think are really fun. The reason I put it in there was for ear training and inspiration, kind of just coming up with ideas of new rhythms or melodies. So let me go ahead and load the default, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of information that I think is fascinating, which is with 10 notes. So let's do it like this: 4 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 10 notes, and let's go to the keyboard and put in 10 pitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So, pop quiz. How many different ways are there of arranging those sounds in that rhythm? So when you think about writing a song, so without changing the rhythm, how many different ways can you order those pitches? So I think I mean, however many people watching, feel free to type your answer, what your guess would be. But typically, if I ask people this question, they say, I don't know, like 30 or 100, 400, something like that. I'm guessing it's going to take too long to put it in. But the answer is 10 factorial, which is 10 with the exclamation mark, which I guess is this. So the answer is 3,628,800 different ways of arranging those 10 pictures without changing the rhythm. So that's 3.5 million. Let's say 4 million. Leah says 1 million, way under. And Mark said 90. Okay, so I hope you're all, and Source 1987 got it right. But I hope the rest of you are equally as mind blown as I am. That's the same as if you've got 10 books on your bookshelf. There's nearly 4 million ways of arranging them. So for anybody with OCD, that seems like a nightmare to me, which is the best of those 4 million ways. But there's 4 million combinations of these pictures without changing the rhythm. So 4 million, and then if I just move the rhythm a little bit, so if I was to shift and randomize the rhythm, let's just do this and put the 4 here. And there's another 4 million ways of having that, and then another 4 million ways of having this. It's pretty bonkers. So that's kind of why I had the randomize feature in here, to just inspire you. So let's say we keep the rhythm the same and we randomize the pitches. So I'm going to choose sounds and I'm going to lock the randomize option. So this is one of 4 million options. And then here's a different one. And another one. And another one. So the idea is, if you're on the piano, you could use this as an ear training exercise. So instead of, well, you could either have it play twice like this, and on the second time you can play along, or you could have it play and then in the pattern you could enter a bar of rest at the end. So now you've got an exercise where it plays you a melody, and then you try and play that on the piano. It gives you it again, and you play it, and then it gives you a different one. And you can have it mix the rhythm up as well. And if you were to put, one way that I use this a lot is to put in all 16th notes and then a bar of rest. Oops. But then I will add rests to the end of this, so that you'll then get kind of a randomized melody and rhythm, because these rests will be mixed in with the notes. So now let's shuffle this. And we can push, we can push up the click so you know where the 1 is. So that's an ear training exercise if you are a piano player. If you're a drummer, I had this in mind as an idea. Well, one thing you could, instead of using pitches, you can use just snare drum. So this will give you a random exercise, and then you just clap that back. I failed to clap it back. So this could be inspiration for fills, or it could be an exercise. You know, I would play along to this on the practice pad, and it just gives me different rhythmic ideas to play, so it kind of keeps things fresh. So this is available only on iOS, I'm afraid, Mark, and not coming to Android anytime soon. But as I said earlier, if you pick up a second-hand iOS device, you can usually find something for less than $100, and a Dr. Beat metronome is 100 and something bucks, so it's cheaper than a Dr. Beat. So that's giving you a exercise for playing on a practice pad or a snare, you know, rhythmic ideas. And then you could do things like, sorry, Mark. Then you can do things like this. You might put in a groove. So here we have like that, and then a bar of rest. So this is going on in sequencer 1, and I'm going to disable this randomizing for a moment. Okay, the oldest version where PolyNome still works at the moment, iOS 10, and I've been debating about whether to make iOS 11 the earliest version, because as new operating system features come out, it makes things easier for me to be able to use those. There's things I can do in iOS 11 that I can't do in iOS 10. Any device that runs iOS 11 can also run iOS 12 and iOS 13, I think, or pretty much. But if you were going to get a second-hand device, I would say try and get something that can run at least iOS 12 and ideally 13. But I have a feeling that both of those might run on the same devices, because I'll probably drop support for iOS 10 at some point in the near future. Maybe not the next version, but the one after. When iOS 14 comes out, you know, usually developers try and support at least the last two versions, so it would be 14 and 13. And at the moment, I'm going back all the way to 10, but it is limiting me in some ways. So the latest version you can get is the best and will last you the longest. But for a while, PolyNome is going to work on this, and the current version will always work. So if you've got a device that ran on iOS 10 and the next update to PolyNome didn't support iOS 10, you would still be able to use this version as it is, which does a lot of stuff. So here I have a groove for a bar and then a bar of rest. So in sequencer 2, I can have a bar of rest when the groove is happening, and then a bar of 16th notes. Let's just do it like this, and some snares and kicks and toms and rests. So then what I can do is randomize this part. So randomize sequencer 2, randomize the sounds. So you'll see when I hit the dice, it shuffles up this. So now we've kind of got a random fill here as inspiration. It probably might sound like crap, but let's have a listen. So you'll get it the second time, and then it'll be shuffled for the next time. So you can hear underneath this, I have the click in the metronome, just as a click sound. I could change that sound to be a hi-hat, a stepped hi-hat. So let's search for hi-hat, foot. And did that work? Yeah. So now this is going to sound like you're just stepping the hi-hat and quarter notes under the fill, which will make it more musical. So some of these are kind of fun. So it'll certainly give you ideas anyway, maybe some inspiration. And then if there's one of these that you particularly like, you can stop playback and tap on this number 2 and set it to loop. And then it will loop that particular one that it was just playing, so you can figure out what it is. And then another way that you could use this is to set, for example, like a jazz ride thing going on up here. So 1 ding ding, and then we'll put the hi-hat on the 2 and 4. So let's make this a stepped hi-hat. And I'll add the swing to this. So we'll set the swing at 33%. And I'm going to clear sequencer 2. So now we've got a jazz ride foundation going on up here. And in the metronome, let's bring that down. And let's add some accents to make this a bit more natural. Okay, so now you've got your kind of jazz foundation going on here. So now you can use Metronome 2 to give you ideas for kick snare comping. So let's say we'll have a bar of rest. No, we'll have a bar of comping, and if you wanted it all to be just eighth notes, then you just put eighth notes in as your rhythm, and then we'll put some snares and a couple of kicks and a couple of rests. And in fact, then let's put a bar of rest after this. So we get a kind of comping thing to play with your kick and snare, and then a bar of rest where you get to copy that. So it's like kind of playing with another drummer. And let's set this to play 2 times before it shuffles. Oh, and we'll turn on the swing for a sequence of 2. And I am going to bring down the volume of the snare a little bit and the kick. So that's the first exercise, da, 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 dun, dun. And then it will shuffle it. So now you've just got all of these different exercises. You don't need a book. You can read it if you want, or you can just use your ears to hear it. And a way that I would probably use this if I were practicing at a kit is, rather than have kicks and snares in here, this is like, drummer 1 plays it and then you copy what drummer 1's playing. But you could instead make it a bit more like you're in a band and have this be melodic things, and then you can play along with them. So let's go to the keyboard and just use, let's go down an octave. And we'll use a few C's and a few G's, or maybe octave, and some rests. So now you can play the kicks with the low ones and the snares. In fact, which were the low ones? So 3 low, 3 high. So I'm going to put kicks with the low ones, just as an example, and snares with the high ones. And so this is an example of what you would play. And if we go into the shift randomized controls, you can see I'm shuffling both lines of sounds. So they'll be linked together. So the low C's will always be with the kick, and the high ones will always be with the snare. Whoops, glitch. Something funny went on there. So then it'll shuffle and give you a different exercise. And then when you want to play along with this, you can mute line 2, mute the kick and snare. And now you just have the keyboard part. And if you're playing this part on the drums, you can mute that too. And we can put a click on, so we know where the time is. So now you've got the exercise for you to play along with, where you just have the keyboard player playing these random ideas. So that's some of the ways that I would use this for either inspiration or ear training, or comping ideas. And you can, there's a lot of different things you can do with it, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of inspiration. Okay, so I'll tell you, it is weird that I have no idea how many people are still watching. So I'll give you another couple of minutes or whatever to ask any more questions you might have. And if there are, I will happily answer them. And if there are not, then I'll call it a day for today. But I'll mention again that if you like the YouTube drum lessons that I have a lot more content on my Teachable website, and I made an offer for that for anybody who was going to tune in to the live stream, and that is here. So that is basically access to about 70 lessons for $1 for a month, just so you can check it out and see if you like it. And if you like it, feel free to stick around. And if you don't, then hopefully that's not too big of a financial loss. But I put a lot of work into those lessons, and I go into a lot of depth, covering a lot of topics. If you were a subscriber on joecrabtree.com, it's the same content, but it's just a newer platform that's easier to access. So that's one thing that you might want to check out. And if you have an interest in odd times and learning about working better with odd times and making it easier to play, then there's a thing called the key counting method, which this will give you 40% off signing up for that. And that's a really cool approach to odd times, which I think you'll find exciting. And my mum, who's not particularly musical, I had her clapping in 1916 in about 2 minutes with that. So you might find that interesting. Source 1987 said, I don't think it's super useful, but are you planning to add a feature to insert nested tuplets? Well, funny you should ask that. There is a feature to insert nested tuplets, and it's in a playlist. Create a new playlist. Nested tuplets. I have a tutorial on this somewhere. In fact, let me just see if I can load up polyrhythm. Here we go. This was my demo for the nested tuplets feature. And there's even a video that shows how it was programmed, so I won't bore you with the details here. But in fact, source 1987, if you have PolyNome, I'm not sure if you do, I'm going to share this with you. Just let me see, polyrhythm. I will just upload that. Polyrhythm. So this is also a new feature. I'm going to share a private link, and you should be able to click this link, and it will let you download this particular playlist. But just to give you an example, this second part of this has a lot of nested tuplets in. So there's your nested tuplets in there. So useful for some people, and it does exist in there. And the instructions, like I say, are at the top of this. So hopefully you'll find that useful. And I'll also mention, for anybody that might be interested, I do weekly live streams on Zoom so that I can see people's faces and have some proper interaction for PolyNome patrons. And you can find out more about becoming a PolyNome patron on this link. So that's basically like another opportunity to have some one-on-one time and get your questions answered. I'll cover all things PolyNome in those lessons, those meetings, whatever we want to call them. Must have been difficult to code this. Yeah, the nested tuplet thing was interesting because the underlying way that PolyNome works made it that I didn't think it was going to be possible to program nested tuplets. And it was kind of on my mind that was a thing that a few people asked for, and it would have been nice to be able to do it. And under the hood, what it actually does is modifies the tempo. So it puts the nested tuplet over the top, and it might say 100 BPM, but actually it's playing, instead of a bar of 4/4 with a 7 tuplet over the top, it plays a bar of 7/4 and plays it faster. So that's what's going on underneath, but it works. So there you go. Okay, we're kind of running over the hour now, and I'm starting to lose my voice. But thank you for those of you who did tune in to watch this. It was fun for me, and I'm open to doing it again. So if you would be up for that, then say so in the comments, and maybe I'll schedule one for a couple of weeks from now. We can talk about different things. If you want to be in on the Zoom Q&A meetings with the PolyNome thing, then check out the Patreon page, and I can see you in there. And check out the other lesson links that I put, and that's it, I guess. I don't have a credits or anything like that, so I'm just going to say bye. Thanks for watching. It's been fun, and stay safe, wash your hands, and all of that.